Hey, what's going on, y'all? It's your man Bentley Kyle Evans, and welcome back to another episode of The Hollywood Blueprint. And today we're going to talk a little bit about directing. We're going to talk a little bit about multi-cam directing versus single cam directing. There's a big difference, so we're going to talk about it. Let's get into it. Okay, so when we talk about two different styles or methods of shooting content, there are two that quickly come to mind, and one would be the single camera method, and the other would be the multi-camera method. Now, with multicam, I think that it's an art form that has somewhat been lost. They're not making as many multi-camera television shows as they once were, but multi-camera is the method that really brought television to the forefront. So now let's talk a little bit about what that is. When we talk about sitcoms, situation comedies, we think of some of the classic ones like I Love Lucy, Sanford and Son, going all the way back to even The Honeymooners and other big comedies that took place, The Jeffersons and so many others. But when we talk about the multi-camera sitcom, we have to understand what that really means. It means that you're actually shooting with multiple cameras. So in the sitcom format, the way that it works nowadays is you shoot a multi-camera sitcom with four separate cameras, and they're all aimed in one direction and they're getting different perspectives. Now, when you think of the difference between multi-cam and single cam, look at it like this. In today's market, if you take a show like, let's say Blackish, or let's say Abbott Elementary, which is even more current, those are what are considered single camera comedies, meaning that they're shot in a cinematic way. Maybe a feature film that would be in the theaters are shot. They're shot like pretty much little feature films, whereas the multicam process is something that was probably, I wouldn't say invented, but I would say it's probably a method that was created so that you could cut down on time, cut down on expenses. Because if you think about it, if you're shooting four cameras at one time, how many takes do you really have to shoot? Because pretty much you have your subject covered all the way around with those four cameras. I personally like the multi-cam format. When you think of a multi-cam show that's being shot and airing today, you would think of something like The Neighborhood, which stars Cedric the Entertainer. And that show is a perfect example of what a multi-cam sitcom is all about. You know, you shoot with three walls. There's a wall that's missing, the fourth wall. And the actors know not to break that fourth wall and look into the camera or look into that direction, because the camera is theoretically the audience looking in on these small stage plays. Now, I like to look at multi-cam sitcoms as just that. They are small, mini stage plays. And sometimes they're shot in front of an audience. A lot of the work can be done in post-production, where the editors will take that footage and they'll cut it in a manner to where it looks really cohesive, and then they'll bring in sound and laughter and things like that to enhance the experience of the comedy. But I think that the multi-cam format somewhat disappeared over the years, and everyone kind of went in the direction of the single camera comedies, like with Modern Family and so many others. But both formats have coexisted for a very, very long time. Let's use Norman Lear as one of the pioneers of multicam, and his shows were like All in the Family, classic, The Jeffersons, classic, Good Times, Sanford and Son, so many others. Kudos to Norman Lear for his work in the multicam space. But again, it was really created to cut your cost. And also on a sound stage, you don't have to shoot on location, so you can control the atmosphere, you can control the sound, you can control the weather, because it's all with lighting and things of that nature. So I think that I have been successful in using the multicam method because I have my own studio which we are shooting in today at Harvest Studios, and it's pretty much set up as a multi-camera space. I like that because I shoot at a very rapid pace. I shoot in a very fast manner because content for me is everything, and to be able to capture a lot of content in a very, very short period of time is very beneficial for me for my business model. My business model has been primarily multi-cam. I really cut my teeth in the multi-cam spaces, of course, on The Martin Show, which I did not direct The Martin Show, Martin, but I did produce and write on that show and made a couple of cameo appearances that some of you may have seen. But the reality of it is, when we first decided to do that show, I know Martin didn't know whether he wanted to do it single cam or multi-camera style, but it made more sense to do it multi-cam because then it would reflect some of the classic shows like I Love Lucy, which is one of my favorites, and those are the ones that I call evergreens. Now I'm a believer that when you shoot in the multi-cam space, those episodes of television are what we call evergreen. Those are the shows that continue to rerun and rerun and rerun throughout the decades and pretty much outlive us all. And it creates a legacy play so that we're making money off of those shows forever. When you think about the multi-camera process, keep in mind that when it started, I think Desi Arnaz was the one that really perfected the craft of doing the multi-cam. Now, it was done before that with Amos and Andy and some other shows before that, but that was the forefront of television at its finest. But when you think of what they did with I Love Lucy, they were only shooting with 3 cameras, which is still a lot. But then they brought in what they call the 4th camera, or industry insiders know that's called the X-Cam. Now, why is it the X-Cam? Well, you had camera A, camera B, camera C, and they're all set up on stage shooting in the same direction. But then they brought in what's called the X-Cam, and this was brought in during the process of a little show called Mork and Mindy that starred the great, incomparable Robin Williams. Now, the reason they brought that camera in was because Robin Williams was so unpredictable in his performance that they never knew what he was going to do. He might just get up and walk across the stage and it wasn't blocked. And so the cameramen could not keep up with him. And even if they did, they lost the other characters and they focused on him. So they brought in what's called the X camera just to follow Robin around because they never knew what he may or may not do. Why it's called the X camera, I'm not really sure of that, but it is, I just look at it as an extra camera. And I think that's what really, really sparked Robin Williams to become the big star that he became. He started out on Happy Days, that I remember, as a character Mork from Ork, a Martian, and then they spun it off into a sitcom because Gary Marshall knew that he could score, making another spinoff of Happy Days. And they did a few spinoffs of Happy Days, and they were all multi-cam, like Laverne and Shirley, another classic multi-camera show that I can't stop watching those. Even when I see them and I'm channel surfing today, I will stop at Laverne and Shirley, Happy Days, and even Mork and Mindy with Mork from Ork, which is Robin Williams. But that's why the X-Cam came into play, just for that. And so then we've all adapted that method, and I particularly watched another wild card that was very physical in his comedy, and that was Martin Lawrence with Martin, and my experience was incomparable. It was like watching lightning in a bottle to watch that guy move around, but we needed that X-Cam in order to keep up with him as well. So when we talk about the single camera method, it's more, that method of shooting is more stringent. It's more, again, it's like shooting a feature film, so there's not a lot of room for ad-libbing. There's not a lot of room for moving around and jumping in and out of frame because with the single camera process, everything is somewhat framed up perfectly. So they watch them rehearse and then they frame everything around that. Where multicam, It's so unpredictable, but it is my choice. It's the method that I choose to work and use on a daily with the shows that I've done. I've shot now more than 400 episodes of television in the multicam space, and some would even call me the multicam sitcom guru. Anyway, that's all I really have to say about that. That's it. That's all. If you guys have any more questions, I'd love to see them in other episodes. I'd love to answer some of them in other episodes. So stay with me and keep your eye on the target because I'm always going to be shooting out new information. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.